Took a while, but Nintendo finally found the secret sauce. They're not a struggling arcade company anymore. They're not getting runner-up in the console wars. 2014, Nintendo's worst financial year? Who even remembers that far back? Since 2017, when they launched the Nintendo Switch, they've been killing it. And now they are more Disney than Atari. They got blockbuster movies, theme parks, apps, gadgets, so many toys. Do they want to make good games? Kinda.
Our mission is to create smiles. The strategy that we utilize to go about doing that is to increase the number of touch points that consumers can have with our characters and worlds.
And that's Nintendo of America's president, so you know it's legit. These days, Nintendo's video games are more of a jumping off point. Again, like Disney. Why reinvent the wheel over and over? If you can squeeze more money out of Frozen, get to squeezing. And hey, it works. Nintendo is ranked 23rd of the largest Japanese companies, and that is up against some big hitters: Toyota, Mitsubishi, Sony. Nintendo's market value has exploded. It is multiplied by 10 since 2015. Is there even a word for that? It's decuple. Nintendo has decupled their market value in 10 years. Google Docs doesn't even recognize that word. And Nintendo is not slowing down. The Nintendo Switch 2? Oh, you mean the fastest selling console in history? And how about them games? I mean, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Pokemon Legends Z to A. So if you're gonna be a player in the space, then, all roads eventually lead to a LEGO partnership. Disney did it, Minecraft did it, and in 2020, Nintendo joined their ranks. Now, I mean, we have LEGO Mario, LEGO Zelda, LEGO Animal Crossing, LEGO Pokemon. Okay, all right, settle down. My goodness, just calm yourself. I don't care what you're into. There is a Nintendo set out there for you. They've got a little something for everyone. And it feels so obvious, right? Like LEGO and Nintendo, what took so long? It's like the popular kids getting elected prom king and prom queen. But if you take a look back in time, LEGO and Nintendo haven't been on the best terms. There was a lawsuit in the 60s, Mega Bloks Nintendo sets, and a crushing no vote on a LEGO Idea Zelda set in the 2010s. Yes, I still remember it. Yes, I'm still hurt by it. So for a long time, LEGO plus Nintendo was nothing more than a pipe dream. So today, a toy historian and I are going back, way back to a scrappier Nintendo and a more standoffish LEGO to see how these two adversaries somehow became best buds. I'm Eric Crittenden, and this is Clutch Power, a show about the ways we love LEGO. Episode 21, LEGO and Nintendo, best friends or mortal enemies? In part 1, an interview with Chris Byrne, aka The Toy Guy. Chris is a toy historian, so he is the person to ask about LEGO and Nintendo in the 20th century. In part 2, Chris and I examine the LEGO and Nintendo of today, 2026. They're both household names, really a very inspiring story. And in a bonus segment, only for Clutch Power supporters, I bring in some support to brainstorm LEGO sets for some, we'll call them B-tier Nintendo properties. Go ahead, get mad that I said that about Fire Emblem. I feel the same way. This is a very interesting history, and it is one Nintendo largely ignores today, but there is a really important business lesson here. You just gotta pivot until you succeed. I mean, that strategy is how we got Amazon, Netflix, even Play-Doh, and of course, both LEGO and Nintendo. Let's go. Part 1. If at first you don't succeed.
Received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
Japan surrendered on September 2nd, 1945, after a 5-year war, 2 cities hit by atomic bombs, and 3 million deaths. Until 1952, Japan was under military occupation, and soon after that, they hit a big period of economic growth. How big? Well, it is officially known as the Japanese economic miracle.
Japanese corporations soon became dominant in many markets, and Americans, of course, took notice. In 1981, a congressional hearing was held with the title Japanese Productivity Lessons for America. Newspapers at the time were filled with articles on the Japanese miracle economy. Businessmen signed themselves and their children up for Japanese lessons.
Of course, this was all a big bubble which burst in the 90s, but we're not talking about that right now. As the Japanese economy was booming, so was this brand new material called plastic. Look at toys before plastic. They're like wooden stuff or like tin. Ugh. Toys after plastic? I mean, walk down the toy aisle.
A lot of the plastics that we know today, they've since evolved and chemically and all that. But a lot of the early plastics, the early consumer plastics, were things that had been developed for the war effort. Early in the early 1950s, people started adapting those plastics because they'd been done, and suddenly they weren't needed for the war. So they were turned to domestic use. Really, by the early 1960s, that's really when we saw plastics being widely used throughout the toy industry.
That's Chris Byrne, the toy guy. You might have seen him before on little shows named like Oprah or Good Morning America or The Today Show, and now he can proudly add clutch power to his portfolio. How did I get this guy? Anyway, Chris is an absolute genius toy historian. When did like toy brands start to really become a thing?
I take a little bit of a curmudgeonly approach to this because I think that there are very few brands in the toy business, and brands are toys that have lasted over time. Barbie is a brand, Hot Wheels is a brand, but I think that the toy industry has largely been an item-driven business rather than a brand-driven business. I think that some of the early crazes were things like Parcheesi in the late 19th century, the Ouija board after World War I, as people really wanted to begin to contact the other side, and the whole rise of spiritualism that happened at that time.
You look at like marbles, it's like there's no marble brand.
I would call that a commodity product or just a regular product that pretty much anybody can get into the marble business. I mean, there might be manufacturers has a specific treatment or a specific thing, but you can't really patent or trademark or copyright a marble.
Right. When did toys kind of start? I mean, I'm thinking of Lego's trademark, which was, I believe, in the 50s. When did that start becoming more popular?
I think it's become more and more part of the toy industry, really, in the years since World War II, when you had things like Mr. Machine and Fascination and Kaplunk and all of these games, and Lego. That really they wanted to distinguish themselves in the marketplace. So protecting that name with a trademark became very important.
When Lego, the bricks, really took off, kind of, what was the landscape of the toy industry back then?
Well, I mean, Lego started in the late 40s, came to the US in 1960, was originally distributed by the Samsonite company in the luggage people here in the US. In 1960, they had a big float in the Thanksgiving Day parade, and it really kind of dovetailed with the ethos generated by Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, saying we will put a man on the moon. And that wasn't just about putting a man on the moon. That was about inspiring creativity and creative play. And you had all of the stuff coming out of Dr. Spock, and sort of the zeitgeist was all about developing children. And Lego was really positioned as something that was fostering imagination, so therefore fostering a healthy child, so therefore becoming not just fun, but advisable for parents.
So Japan, obviously World War II happens. There's trying to get back on their feet. What was sort of the state of Japanese toys back then?
In the years really just right after World War II, it was there had been celluloid plastic, but there wasn't really they weren't really plastics then. Japan toys or Japanese toys back then were largely tin like robots, wind up, really made for the US market, because then as now the US is still the largest toy market in the world. So they were trying to do things like they had wind up cars, they had all kinds of stuff, and it was made in Japan. Made in occupied Japan was actually also something that appeared on toys as well. Those are really highly valued for collectors right now. That we saw robots, as robots got popular through Robbie the Robot and other types of entertainment. They were really trying to go after that. Relatively easy to make, but then, as happens, they got more and more proficient at manufacturing, so the toys became a lot more sophisticated as well.
That's tough competition. And Nintendo was doing everything to leave their mark. They'd been around a long time, but they hadn't really had that, like, slam dunk toy. What is, I guess, the origin of Nintendo?
Nintendo was actually founded in the late 19th century. It was a playing card company, and they did a lot of playing cards for popular games, and they started with sort of handmade artistic playing cards, and as they went on, they evolved into more of a toy company, because obviously this predates the technology. They did sort of figurative stuff later on, and then they did sort of, as they got into more plastics, they tried to expand and do other types of things. But they were also one of the early licensees of company, because they did deals with not only Japanese homegrown IP, but also with Disney. As Disney was expanding around the world, they really started to get put Disney on their playing cards, because Disney really started licensing in the 1930s with Steamboat Bill and all of that stuff. And so suddenly Disney saw, hey, this is a great revenue stream. We're going to take part of that.
So it sounded like Nintendo never really landed on anything. They were just kind of trying everything.
They did. I mean, they were sort of a general toy company. They did board games. They did Go, which later became Othello. They did mahjong sets. They did a lot of stuff. I mean, they were very, there are still companies like that. They're, up until recently, Pressman Toy did, in addition to their own branded stuff or their own developed IP, they were a major supplier of dominoes, chess, checkers, things like that. Things that were classic.
What did Nintendo stand out from other Japanese toy makers, or were they just kind of part of the flock?
Before video games or before electronics, I think that they were pretty much a generic toy company. But also, think about at the time, as there were a lot of those. It was only in the early 60s that we started to see companies in the U.S. like Remco, Ideal, Mattel, Hasbro emerge as kind of leading toy brands, if you will.
Yeah. So let's talk about the N and B bricks.
Well, they were a building block, and what made them a little bit different was that whereas Lego was mostly blocky, they introduced round shapes, they introduced other things, and they were really introduced as a direct competitor to Lego. They came out in 1968, so they were really like any toy company. They were looking at, hey, this is getting to be, a hot property or a hot category. Can we be part of it? Can we get part of it?
So you mentioned, some of the N and B blocks have round edges. I know the interlocking system is a little different. Are there other kind of key differences between a Lego brick and an N and B brick?
They were designed to be more organic, if you will, in the design, so that you had curved pieces, you had things that made things look more realistic rather than just sort of the blocky sense that Lego had at the time.
Which is ironic. Now you look at Lego, they're so focused on curved pieces.
Well, they've evolved. They've really said, okay, as Lego has become as much a model building play pattern as a open-ended creative play pattern, they've built some great models. You look at the botanicals or the icons or things like that are really very much for an adult collector who wants something realistic that they can display.
Eventually, Lego sued Nintendo over NMB blocks.
Right. Lego believed that they were infringing on the connection system, which was actually patented. One of the things that always distinguished Lego was that the bricks held together. That was something that American bricks didn't do. That was, the tolerances of when you snap the bricks together. That was very much what Lego had, and it was patented. It was a patented, and so they would have sued for patent infringement on that with Nintendo.
Yeah. So what ultimately happened with that lawsuit?
Nintendo won. Nintendo won, and the reason they won, and I, as somebody who's been an expert witness in many of these types of cases in recent years, what you end up saying is it's similar but not identical. So that there was they found that the system was enough different that it didn't infringe on the patent, and that's endemic in the toy industry. I mean, toy industry, their toy companies have patent busters, who are looking for ways to achieve something without infringing on a patent. So that's so they won.
That's interesting that's sort of the patent busters. So they want to get like as close to a product as possible without, infringing on the patent.
Exactly. Because you want to be able to compete in the market, and you want to be able to compete with other people, and quite frankly, you want to confuse things in the mind of the consumer. So if you're selling something, if it's just like Lego, but it's it's $10 less or whatever, that's your competitive frame. So it's kind of like store brand peaches.
Well, what's really interesting is that NMB blocks, even though Nintendo won, like there's very few people who remember. Well,
yeah, and I think that, as happens with anything that is, I hate knockoff is such an ugly word, but when you do that, something that was inspired by something that has other market placement, the market actually takes care of that. The first mover usually is the one who dominates the market, and Nintendo really couldn't compete in that area, or for whatever business decision they decided to withdraw from the market. So they won, but by the early 70s, 72, 73, those blocks were off the market.
Yeah. So between sort of that period of Nintendo and the arcade, the Donkey Kong, eventually the consoles, what else did Nintendo have going on?
I don't really know.
Fair enough.
I think that they were doing. I think that they were doing things like, as I mentioned, the basic games and the basic types of commodity, if you will, products. So yeah.
And then video games just happened to take off.
Right, but it wasn't. When you think about the time in the toy industry, like this is the early 70s. You're starting to see the glimmers of video games coming on the horizon. Probably one of the Magnavox Odyssey and some other early things like that. They also had a thing called the Ultra Hand at the time, which was one of those like the grabber type of thing. And they did all kinds of things like that. So they were being a basic toy company.
Yeah. What I find interesting is that Nintendo doesn't really reference that part of their history anymore. I think with NMB specifically, I believe there's one reference in like one Game Boy Mario game.
Yes, there is. They actually built them into the game.
Mario Land 2, I believe.
Mario Land 2, that's the one, yeah.
It's interesting. Do you think Nintendo is hesitant to sort of uncover or call attention to that period of their past?
I don't think they're hesitant to, but it's just like, how much space are you going to devote to people? And I think that to things, and I think that I actually think it's kind of interesting in the evolution of a company to, kind of beginning in the late 19th century and evolving to reflect the culture and different things and finding its way. I actually think it's kind of an interesting story because, as we'll talk about, they ultimately realized that it was stronger for them to license their IP to establish construction companies than to be in the construction business themselves. And that's very consistent with a lot in the toy industry.
I love how strong the parallels are between Lego and Nintendo. Both started as these small little toy companies. Both tried idea after idea. Lego did wooden toys and toy trucks and pull toys, and Nintendo did cards and puzzles and light guns. Of course, Lego locked in their interlocking brick system in the late 40s. It took Nintendo a little longer to figure out the whole video game thing, but once they did... Oh, yeah, like lightning in a bottle. Donkey Kong came out in 1981, and then all of a sudden, it was Nintendo who was getting copied. YouTuber Video Game Donkey really sums up the craze.
In Logger, you went up against a big bird. In Monkey Business, you went up against a man. On the Spectrum, there was one called Kong, but then there was another one called Crazy Kong, but then there was another one called Killer Kong. Donkey King had barrels of fun, but Monkey Kong had the funniest name of any video game.
Soon after, we got Mario, then Yoshi, then Zelda, then the NES, SNES, N64, GameCube, Wii U, Switch 2, and I'm gonna stop naming Nintendo things, but the point is, Nintendo tried, Nintendo failed, Nintendo kept trying, and after 80 years, they finally nailed it, and they don't really look back. Nintendo wants you to focus on their successes, not their failures. And I mean, can you blame them? That's business, baby. Up next, it is time to move into the modern era. After decades of circling the same waters, why Nintendo and Lego finally partnered up. Part 2. Playing with Power. At a random book fair, I as a kid, I nabbed one of those how to draw books. It was all about these Nintendo characters like Mario and Link and Yoshi, like the big hits. And I spent so long drawing Mario over and over until I got like really good at it. I was, I think, 8. And 20 years later, I can still pretty much remember how to draw Mario. You get the big flat circle for the nose, the 6 waves on the mustache, those big oval eyes. And I couldn't play video games back then. I wasn't allowed. So all I knew about Mario was how to draw him and a Super Mario World strategy guide I found at a thrift store. Mario was like this elusive game to me. I hoped one day I could see him in all his true video game glory. And again, I wasn't even playing video games back then, yet Mario had a huge influence on me. Now, Mario's up there with like Jesus and Spider-Man as like one of the most iconic characters. Like my mom knows who Mario is, And pretty much since Super Mario Bros. In 1985, Nintendo's been licensing out that red boy to toy companies left and right. You got action figures, wind-up toys, a marionette, Pogs. So in 2011, when Nintendo finally licensed buildable sets for Mario, everyone was like, yeah, obviously, it's about time to team up with Lego. But take a closer look at those sets, my friend, because that is not Lego that Nintendo's bringing to the dance. This is a bit speculative, but why do you think Nintendo went with Kinects and Mega Bloks before they went with Lego?
Well, it's speculative because when somebody is pitching a license, you go in and you say, here's what we're thinking of doing, here's what we like, here's how we're going to do it, and here's what we're going to pay you. So there's many reasons why a licensor would choose a specific licensee. Kinects had a very unique construction system. I mean, there hasn't really been anything quite like Kinects. It's sort of like the next generation of Tinker Toy from the early 20th century, but it was a unique thing. The way that the pieces were, they allowed action, they allowed it playability, if you will, which I think at the time people looked at Lego and said, well, how do I play this? And because it really is a building set.
Yeah. How precious is Nintendo with their IP?
I think like any licensor, they're very careful about it. They want to make sure that their core values are presented, but they want to complement their core values. They want to serve their audience. They want to make sure that what they're doing is reflected throughout the brand. You can't just suddenly introduce something different. I mean, if suddenly you wanted to introduce, I don't know, classic cars or zebras into a Nintendo set, they would probably say no, because that's not on our brand. I mean, maybe if you developed it over time, you could introduce a zebra, but they want to maintain the integrity of their brand and their brand image to the extent possible in the products that they produce.
I remember probably about 13 years ago, there was a Lego idea set of a Zelda thing, and online everyone was like, this is going to be it. And then Nintendo back then, I think, was very more protective of their brand. They didn't really want to license it out to Lego. What changed? Honestly,
I think what would have changed would have been the growing success of Lego, starting with Star Wars.
Yeah.
Lego hadn't been a licensing powerhouse for years, whereas Mega had done other types of licenses, but so there was a question was, well, can they do it? But then Star Wars was basically proof of concept, and once Star Wars hit for Lego, was sort of all guardrails were off. Everybody was looking to try to license. And it's interesting how Lego got Star Wars, because Hasbro at the time didn't want to get into the construction business. So because they had the Star Wars license through the acquisition of Kenner, and Kenner had it, and then nobody wanted Star Wars, and then Kenner got it, then Hasbro got Kenner, then Hasbro didn't want construction, so Lego got it, and then years later Hasbro tries to get into construction, but they don't do it. I mean, this is sort of the toy industry sort of in a nutshell.
Yeah, so 2020 we got the Lego Mario sets. And I remember at the time when it came out, it felt very much like Nintendo and Lego were compromising. Because it wasn't, the adult Lego fans wanted models. But it felt like Lego and Nintendo wanted something that was very play heavy.
Right.
So how did the Lego Mario sets actually do for kids?
They actually did pretty well. Obviously we don't have statistics or sales figures on any of the sets, but they were really popular, and the play was basic, and it really kind of skewed younger, which is actually really an interesting concept that kids who might not be ready for the sophisticated video game could still be involved in the Mario franchise through the construction sets and playing, and the narrative that evolves around Mario could be expressed through play with the Lego sets.
Yeah, so the Lego Mario is sort of a gateway to the Mario games instead of the other way around.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. I think that they're complementary. You don't really know on an individual basis what the point of entry is for an individual child, but having those various points of entry available increases the chance that somebody who likes the Lego set is then going to want to play the video game, and vice versa. If you've got the video game, hey, you're going to take it. I love this so much, I want to take it off the screen and dimensionalize it and play with it physically.
And now it seems a bit like they're skewing more towards models. The recent Zelda set announcement, the Pokemon sets. It seems like the build and play is sort of being minimized for the build and display.
Well, and I think that's accurate, and I think it very much represents the change in the toy industry right now and the rise of fandom that we've seen, and that people are expressing their fandom through different collectibles and different form factors, whether it's Lego or a minifig or little people or other types of things. These are things that are attracting the fans, so those are the ones who are opening up their pocketbooks to buy this stuff.
Yeah. What audiences are Nintendo and Lego trying to reach with the Lego Nintendo toys?
I think everybody. I know I'm being a little bit waggish, but I think that as with Nintendo and as with Lego, there really is something for everybody at any kind of price point or entry level, so that there are more and more games that are great for little kids. For example, Lego Animal Crossing kind of skewed fairly young, but there were Lego sets for Animal Crossing because they were super cute. And But I think it goes all the way up to people who are, big Bowser fans or dyed-in-the-wool, Peach fans, or, Mario Kart fans. Mario Kart being probably the dominant property out there right now for Nintendo. I think that they've really tried to say, well, what's going to work, and what are we going to try, and is this going to catch on?
Yeah. You mentioned a term earlier that I'd like to dive into. It was kidult.
Kidult.
What is that?
So kidult is really adults buying for their own use, collection, display toys that would traditionally have gone to kids. And the term was coined by the Hong Kong Trade Council in 2013 and unveiled at the Hong Kong Toy Fair that year. And everybody's going, that's an ugly word. Ugh. And it's still an ugly word, in my opinion, but it's very much what people are doing. And it really means that people are collecting or they're playing with toys. And what it is, it's nothing new in human development. People have always collected. You have Staffordshire pottery from the early part of the 19th century, which is huge, almost mania. You have Hummel figures, you have frogs, you have all kinds of things that people have collected, Beanie Babies. There is this human impulse to collect things and things that have an emotional resonance. Well, it turns out now we're 3 generations into Lego or Marvel or any of those things. Those touch points, emotional touch points, are centered on Marvel characters, Lego characters, all of those things. It's still the same human impulse. It's just that now there's a market for these that really didn't exist anymore. You don't grow out of Lego anymore.
Yeah. Did toy companies realize it was just more profitable to continue to market to adults?
Well, obviously, I think it became a growing demographic group. Yes, and as they saw, really, it really started, I think, with the Star Wars action figures. As we got into the 90s. It was the kids who had grown up with the original Star Wars figures were starting to collect them. The kids who'd grown up with Ninja Turtles in the early 80s were starting to collect them. And it really started to become more and more something that toy companies and the culture at large recognized as something people were doing.
Yeah, well, that's what I think is really interesting about the new Pokemon sets. Like, one is $650, giant models of 3 Pokemon. No kid is going to get that.
It's not intended for kids. I mean, it's definitely aspirational. You go into the Lego store and you see those built, and it's like kids' eyes get wide, and they do that. And there's a flagship store here, but at the same time, what you're going to drive are the lower end, probably higher margin Pokemon sets or other types of things. So it's the full range. It's like when you go in and you look at a Birkin bag, a handbag that's also $100,000. People are not, very few people are spending that. They're buying the $2,000 handbag, still for affluent customers. But it's that kind of marquee product, that you will, that a few people will buy, but that really shows the range and capability and design talent of Lego.
Do toy companies find it more profitable to target older adults who spend more versus, kind of that bottom line?
Well, certainly right now, I think that it's a complementary. It doesn't exclude the younger end, but when you've got younger end toys, mom and dad are still the gatekeepers because the kids don't have their own money. But if I go into the Lego store and I want that $600 Pokemon, and I think I'm going to have it, I plop down my credit card, and I don't have to ask permission from anybody.
Yeah.
Maybe my credit card company, but no, I don't have to ask permission. So there's no gatekeeper for the adult purchaser of toys for themselves.
Yeah. What do you think Lego's future is? Looking at their trajectory in the last, say, 10 years, where do you think they'll be in another 10?
That's a great question. And if I knew, I think I look at what they've done, and I see that, looking at botanicals and looking at icons and looking at art. And at the same time, I think they've also leaned more heavily into Duplo and the younger age. I think they're going to continue to expand and identify different markets and different demographics that they can target with product. I think that one of the things that they've done so well has been the experiential type of thing in the stores, in the parks, in the different ways that people engage with Lego. But they have things out there right now. They built a model. You could build a model of the first, I guess, Game Boy that's one of their other Nintendo products. And so I think it's a way of tapping into that emotional connection with IP expressed through construction.
Yeah. How do you think that philosophy lines up with Lego's values? Because I look at Lego and say the 90s. No IP. This was before Star Wars. Very targeted on that like 8 to 12-year-old male demographic.
Right.
How has Lego Shift sort of stuck with their values or contradicted it?
Well, I think that Lego comes from the Danish from play well, right? Legot. And I think that what they've done is they've emphasized the experience of engaging with Lego. And whether that experience is open-ended play or model building or engagement with a property that you love, that's what they've tried to maintain throughout. And I think that is why they continue to be successful, because when a company strays away from its core values, it tends to lose consumers.
For now, Lego and Nintendo seem like they're in lockstep. We're getting more and more Lego Nintendo sets each year. There's a Lego-themed furniture selections in Animal Crossing, and I have a hunch that one day the Smart Brick will have some Mario crossover. But my question is, what is next? Is Lego gonna dive even deeper into Nintendo themes like Lego Metroid, Lego Pikmin? The 4 themes they have right now are like super safe bets. They're just straight up some of the most popular video game franchises ever. So if Lego keeps churning out Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, Pokemon sets, I think people will be happy. Plus, my girlfriend really likes the Lego Yoshi, so please, Lego, let's get some more color variants up in the mix. That is the only request I'll ever make for Lego on this show, I promise. Huge thanks to Chris for talking with me on this episode. He is like a genuine professional, and I'm always so honored when people like him come on the show because my audience is pretty tiny. If you want to see more about Chris, head to thetoyguy.com or keep an eye out on morning talk shows everywhere, especially around the holiday. He's always popping up on those. He's basically a mainstay on Live with Kelly and Mark at this point. He's so great and his energy is so infectious. It's wonderful talking to him. And thanks to my buddy Joe. We've been doing content for like 12, 13 years. It's always fun to chat with him. I love that chemistry. And thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to follow the show, please share it by word of mouth. Tell a friend, tell your online Lego buddies. And of course, following the podcast everywhere is a huge help. It's the same handle wherever you go, clutchpower.pod. If you want to step up even more, why not become a patron? You get extra content for every episode along with a special digital Lego mock. For this one, it's going to be nothing else than a sketch of Mr. Mario himself. Yes, I am finding a way to include that one-off stupid Lego Mario mustache piece. You're welcome, Cheesy Studios. You can see all that on my socials. Patreon is just $2 a month if you'd like to support the show. My name is Eric Crittenden, and this has been Clutch Power. Stay connected.